Disclosure Day is the latest film directed by the man who needs no introduction, Mr. Steven Spielberg. And I think Steven might go down as having more classics under his belt than any other filmmaker in our lifetime. And with that being said, I think Steven is definitely in an interesting part of his career. I mean, even with COVID happening, he managed to put out two of my favorite films he's ever made. West Side Story is pretty underrated in my opinion. I think in terms of a modern musical, Steven really went all out. Some of his best directing ever in my opinion. I mean, it's such a beautiful movie. We don't gotta talk about the guy who's, And he followed that up with The Fabelmans, which is even better. I mean, The Fabelmans would have been the perfect swan song for him to go out on, as it's kind of recontextualizing his entire career and I guess still continuing to dissect some of the themes that have really driven him as a filmmaker. And so I wasn't sure if Disclosure Day was going to do something similar, as it is Steven returning to science fiction, which is one of his more well-worn genre forays. I mean, you could argue that science fiction and aliens in particular are kind of Steven's bread and butter. I mean, in terms of science fiction, Close Encounters and E.T. are kind of as iconic as it gets. And he also has some really great science fiction films later in his career, like Minority Report and War of the Worlds. It feels like Steven's pocket is making a science fiction film that also is kind of a coming of age movie. I mean, how many people's first exposure to science fiction was through Steven with things like E.T.? And we had probably the biggest bomb of Steven Spielberg's career with Ready Player One. And I don't necessarily mean a bomb in terms of commercial success, but rather a bomb in terms of his reputation. That movie is still a bit of a joke to this very day, and it's not like that movie affected the way people look at Steven's older films, but rather some people took it as proof that Steven can no longer pull off a science fiction movie, or at the very least, he no longer has his finger on that pulse anymore. And just for fun, I tried to come into Disclosure Day as blindly as possible. I mean, I had seen the trailers when I was seeing a movie in theaters, but the trailers are definitely vague and hard to decipher, to say the least. And I think unfortunately a lot of people have written off the movie before they've even seen it due to those trailers being kind of nonsensical. So after having watched the movie, this is the kind of film I have not seen in such a long time. So at the heart of this story are Josh O'Connor and Emily Blunt, whose characters have secrets that, if revealed, may prove aliens exist. So at its core, Disclosure Day is a suspense thriller, and I promise I'm not going to keep comparing it to Spielberg's previous films, but think of it as a mix between Minority Report and E.T. And so I think Spielberg is really in his bag when he can mix a bit of suspense and intrigue, and really just pull that tension to be as tight as possible. And as always with Spielberg, the core of this tension comes from our investment in these characters. And so Spielberg's direction, along with a score by John Williams and cinematography by Janusz Kaminski, really allows this film to evoke that kind of classic 80s, 90s, even early 2000s style of filmmaking. And that is definitely the biggest surprise that I think this film had for me. And blending all these elements together really creates a feeling that you can't put into words, but rather it's just best when it is something you can experience in motion on the screen. And so it just feels clear to me that Spielberg was not trying to rehash what he's done before with sci-fi. He wasn't trying to examine his previous body of work when it comes to E.T. or Close Encounters, but rather it seems like he just loves making this style of movie, and he really hasn't missed a step for the most part. And so Disclosure Day is a film that takes itself pretty seriously, but Spielberg manages to blend the seriousness with a feeling of sincerity but also optimism in a way that he has mastered. This is a film that really asks you to leave your disbelief or your cynicism at the door, because this is a movie that's really just trying to be fun. It's trying to evoke that kind of magic that people felt when they first saw a Spielberg film upwards of 50 years ago. And so that is something that is hard to convey in a trailer, but thankfully a lot of these scenes that were kind of confounding in the trailer work a lot better in the actual film. So Emily Blunt is without a doubt the star of the show here. She gives a really strong performance, and as someone who has already earned her keep in Hollywood, this is a character unlike anything I've seen from her before. Her character is thrown into this world much like we are, and her performance brings a certain vulnerability that was so key, I think, to investing me in this story. Her performance really manages a great balance of showing a character who is at times scared out of her mind, but is courageous enough to keep taking one step at a time. And Josh O'Connor is also really good here. His character is like a disillusioned man on the run, but but he kind of acts as a rock for other characters when they least expect it. This is my first time seeing Eve Hewson in a role, but I was really surprised by how much she's able to convey with just her eyes, and it's clear that we're going to be seeing a lot more of her after this performance. And Coleman Domingo is incredible in everything. I just wish that he got a little bit more screen time here. He's great at being a guiding light for our other characters. I honestly just wish we got to see more of him. And so speaking of great actors, we also have Colin Firth here. I mean, he is an Academy Award winning actor. He gives it his all as the film's antagonist, but the main conflict of this film is kind of its most middle of the road aspect. So Colin Firth's character is the head of Wardex, a corporation who is trying to stop Emily Blunt and Josh O'Connor's characters from revealing that sensitive information. And the issue is that Wardex is kind of incompetent as a group of antagonists. I mean, this film is really at its best when John Williams is on the strings and Spielberg is ratcheting up the tension. And so there are some really great sequences that just slowly build that tension and a few different times turn into some pretty memorable set pieces. I just think that these set pieces end up being a little bit too convoluted, and that makes it so that the editing doesn't always keep up, and these sequences at times last just a moment too long, and so that can lead to these Wardex goons kind of just standing around, not firing their guns, not even chasing them. And that, along with the use of CGI and occasionally bad green screen, did undermine the believability of these moments for me. And as the movie progresses, it became kind of unclear to me whether Wardex was trying to kill Emily Blunt and Josh O'Connor, or whether they were trying to just capture them, and they kind of switch back and forth scene to scene. And so Colin Firth aside, I think this corporation Wardex ends up being just as generic as antagonists from one of the lesser Mission Impossible movies. And so it is the emotional stakes between these characters that are the most compelling part of the movie. And although I think Wardex are kind of weak as a group of goons, some of the best scenes are when Colin Firth kind of gets to go toe to toe with different protagonists and how he can even pit two people against each other. And it's just so great to see Steven Spielberg not resting on his laurels. I mean, he's really still trying to make every shot like as good as he possibly can. It still seems like he's making up the rules as he goes with the way he moves the camera, the way he stages characters and blocks out scenes. I mean, Spielberg puts so much passion into his camera work. He's really still up there with people like George Miller and Park Chan-wook. And so although Steven is having a lot of fun on the screen, he still really does try to explore some more heady themes in this movie. A few of our characters here kind of realize that their only path forward is to unpack and kind of dig into their past. And these character arcs really try to explore whether or not we as people can handle certain truths, like whether we should protect ourselves from certain information out of fear or give others and give ourselves the chance to grow by knowing this information, even if it might change our perception of the world. So there are a few things about this movie that would make a more cynical moviegoer laugh or even scoff, but that's just because Steven Spielberg wears his heart on his sleeve. Spielberg and his crew here were just not afraid to make a movie that is sincere and optimistic and hopeful and about empathy, while at the same time being a love letter to the films that he kind of came up on, not through references or nostalgia bait, but by making the film exactly the same way he's been doing and kind of the only way he knows how, with a lot of heart and passion and integrity. And so there are parts of this movie that don't come together perfectly, but I'm just amazed at the way this film was able to transport me back a few decades, purely by this group of filmmakers and performers giving it their all and putting their heart on the screen. And so with that, I would give Disclosure Day a 4 out of 5 stars. But thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. Let me know what you thought of the film. I know this one's going to be probably pretty divisive. I haven't seen any reviews, but I know not everybody's going to like this. But please let me know what you thought, and I will see you guys in the next one.